Hey everybody, Websy here, and welcome to the Late Night Load. I don't know if anybody's going to come in and hang out with us tonight while we do our show, but it's okay. We're here. We're looking good. Everybody's happy, healthy. Um, yeah, I am getting ready for a photo shoot. I've been supposed to have did it 2 nights ago, but I'm just in the mood to slack off and see how everybody else feels when you slack. You know. All right. Well, anyways. Um, yeah, I'm just here having fun. I have got a whole bunch of work on my plate in the model industry, so it's really nice that we have access to some really cool stories and stuff that we can be looking up and talking about. Something that we're going to be talking about coming up is Egypt, Area 51. We're going to jump in there and we're going to dissect that, So keep that in mind. Uh, some of the other things that we've been talking about are looking good. And then certain video games and stuff came out. People are happy with those. We're gonna definitely check in here tonight and see if we can see anything on that. If anybody's playing that, our people. I'm live. Your action. It says I'm live. It's cool. Um, uh, where do you go to find other people's? I'm so new to stream. Don't judge me, guys. Don't judge me. I'm so new to stream. It's crazy. Look at my big old huge arm. Rawr. Just a giant arm. It's over 3 feet of arm right there, brother. Rawr. What? Yeah, I'm big. I'm a big guy. I weigh quite a bit. Whoa. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, that's it. That's what we got. We're just doing that tonight. So the video we've been watching is kind of like a video book kind of type of deal. Definitely a read along. Is called Journey to Planet Serpo, a true story of interplanetary travel. All right, so that's a pretty interesting title, right? I think it is too. I like it very much. I like it. I like it. Thank you. It's already loaded up and everything. I got the phone screen ready to go. Ready to go? I gotta unlock my phone. Hold on. Doesn't want me giving away my safety bits. All right. So, um, here we are. Excuse me. Air in my house has been really dry. And then we have a storm coming in. Shit's gonna be great. All right. There we go. There she blows. All right, everybody. Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, Chapter 13 of 18. So we're not too far off from being done. So, good stuff. Hey, out there in Twitter land or Twitch land, how's it going, Twitch person? I don't know if you can chat with us or not, but for those of you that are out there, if you want to get a direct link to chatting with us, you can hit this QR code, and this QR code will bring you directly to our YouTube channel where you can get a direct link and chat with us right on our chat board. All right. And if you want to donate and become a sponsor, go to this QR code, and that will bring you to webc patreon.com. And if you don't want to do any of that, if you know that we do Kip Ash Gundam, oh, let's fix that. That's not right. All right, so Kip Ash Gundam stickers. That's one of our operating setups is Kip Ash Gundam. That's where we help and guide people with model building. It's a great place. We love it. We love working with everybody there. It's an awesome setup. So, Kit Bash Gundam stickers are on sale. If you're a part of the Kit Bash Gundam crew, or even if you're looking for some cool Gundam stickers that look cool, hit us up, man. That's 3 stickers for $4. That's a pretty good price. There's no shipping fees or anything. It's just $4. So hit us up. It's a direct link to a payment where you'll get the stickers as soon as you feel like, wow, it'll be no time. Through snail mail still, but you'll get the stickers. All right, and next is our sponsor, Clarksville Hobby Depot LLC. Has a sale going on right now with Gundam NIte L.O.A.D, and I am promoting it. And they have other kits that are on sale and stuff on their site. So if you click the direct link here or go into the chat box and click the link in the chat box, you will get a direct link over to our sponsors, Clarksville Hobby Depot LLC, where they will help you find your hobby needs. All right. Let's get into this show.
Chapter 13. A Police State. In the following entries in the team commander's diary, we find that there was no official program to exchange scientific information at the highest levels, but the team was reduced to teaching technical information about Earth to some uncomprehending students. This is amazing. It would have been expected that the team scientists would have been invited to discussions with the top EBIN university and organizational technocrats. Evidently, the EBINs had obtained all the information about our science and technology that they wanted by covert scrutiny of our university and corporate research facilities. We really didn't know very much about the extent of their surveillance activities prior to the Roswell crash. Apparently, they had concluded that we were still in the scientific dark ages, and they weren't interested in anything that we had to teach them. In this diary entry, the commander wrestles with teaching Earth science to some EBIN students. It was difficult to speak science to the EBINs. How do we explain Einstein? We had a difficult time relating our science to them. However, they seem to understand our physics and chemistry quicker than we can. We managed to observe some strange things about their technology. First, we took apart one of the locators they placed on our belts. It wasn't easy. There were no screws or bolts holding it together. We had to break the thing. The electronics inside was nothing we have ever observed. There were no transistors, tubes, rectifiers, coils, or other electronic components like our technology. This thing just had wires and some bulges in the wires at certain points. There was 2 components, which no one had ever seen. We could not use our frequency counter to determine the frequency it transmitted and received. It was out of our range. 633 and 661 used some other equipment to analyze the thing, but couldn't understand it. We asked the EBIN scientist, who we called EB4. The problem was the translation. EB2 had to translate because EB4 didn't speak English. A lot was lost in translation, even though EB2 does a pretty good job with English. We showed EB4, one of our portable radios. The Motorola FM radio was pretty complex to us. It was new, and contained 4 channels. 661 took apart the radio in front of EB4, explained the parts and the different crystals we use for frequency. EB4 couldn't understand it. He seemed as lost with our radio as we did with theirs. EB2 told us that EB4 couldn't understand the radio, or how it worked. So that was our dilemma. How do we exchange science? Each of our civilizations must learn from the other. So we decided to begin a school. Our first days were pretty tough. We started with simple things, which we thought would be similar to what they would know. We chose light. 661, who did some teaching before, started with wavelengths. 661 started with non-visible light, and the different angstroms. Then 661 showed them the spectrum of light. 661 showed them cosmic rays, and how we measured them. Then he went to gamma rays, X-rays, and ultraviolet light. 661 explained that light was what we called electromagnetic waves. Over a period of even days, 661 explained everything he knew about light, frequencies, and a description of the frequency bands. During this time, several other EBINs came in and listened. EB2 was extremely tasked with translating this. She had a difficult time explaining everything 661 said, because she didn't know the even words for everything. But she did an outstanding job of describing what 661 was saying. I don't think EB4 got everything 661 said, but it didn't take long for EB4 to realize what 661 was describing. 661 then showed EB4 a repair manual for one piece of our test equipment. Since everything, or almost everything we brought was military, it was a military manual. The manual contained schematics of the circuits. EB4 was completely lost, but eventually figured out what 661 was showing him was the inside of the test equipment. 661 then started showing the basics of electricity. Ohm's laws, different formulas to figure voltage and amperes. EB4 was confused, to say the least. But one of the other Ebens who had come in to listen grasped the idea quickly. We called this Eben, EB5, or the Einstein. This Eben was smart, exceptionally smart. After 3 years, we finally meet an Eben who can grasp our science. The only problem is, he couldn't speak English. But he asked questions, which EB4 didn't really do. Although it took several lessons to teach EB5 what each letter meant in a formula, EB5 finally realized what we were saying. This Eben must have an IQ of 300. EB5 actually solved some simple problems set up by 661. Basic electricity, solving for the amount of resistance in a circuit, simple things like that. It was a remarkable scene. EB5 became our A student. We couldn't get rid of the guy. He followed us around and asked questions through EB2. When EB2 wasn't available, he would simply point and shrug his shoulders. We'd speak to him in English, or have 420 or 475 translate to him. But only 420 could understand most of what EB5 was saying. This came to another interesting point. EB5 looked a little different than the rest of the Ebens. During the last several years, we have noticed some of the Ebens, especially the ones who live up north, look different. Their heads seem to be bigger. They have a more weathered-looking face. EB5 is from the north. He lives in the second village to our north. The distance is approximately 5 kilometers. I drew the map in entry 4432, showing all the villages in the north. I'm sure they have more villages farther away, but we haven't visited them yet. EB5 also does not have a mate. This is strange, but not totally uncommon. We have found several Ebens without mates. We haven't delved into the personal life of EB5, but 518 wants to. I explained in one entry about the Eben technology when it comes to screws, bolts, etc. They don't have any. Everything they make is sealed with some sort of solder, or melting method. When we visited their manufacturing plant, we were amazed at how efficient they were with manufacturing furniture, their helicopters, or flying devices. We still haven't seen their main spacecraft manufacturing plant. It must be in the far west and south. I'm sure we will visit the place someday. We still have 7 years, or at least 7 Earth years left. As I mentioned before, we have totally lost track of Earth time. We gave that up many of our years ago. We have gauged our time on Eben time, which is extremely complex, as I mentioned before. In the following entry in the commander's diary, we begin to appreciate how an alien civilization could have achieved a technology so advanced that they can travel through time to distant stars, create something as wonderful as the Yellow Book, and can clone complex organisms, and yet is not aware of the elementary principles of electricity that would appear to be the essential prerequisites of such technology. As with the Eben doctors who seem to have a monopoly on advanced bioscience, it is probable that the scientists who understand space travel and navigation are also a small elite clique. In other words, the Ebens apparently reserve higher science and technology for a limited few, and do not share this knowledge with the masses. They may even have initiation rites for these selected individuals. This is reminiscent of ancient Egyptian civilization, where only the high priests were taught hieroglyphics, the language of the Hierophants, and of modern America, where advanced science is contained within the classified world of black projects, available only to those who have passed complex background checks, and so have been admitted to the ranks of the scientific elite. This seems to be a method of social control and manipulation not limited to Earth. The fact that the sophisticated technology, based on advanced physics and chemistry, does not trickle down to the masses is exemplified by this statement by Anonymous. The Ebens had no forms of refrigeration, except in industry. In other words, the Eben civilization is basically a military-industrial oligarchy. The population is divided into two groups, the elite controllers who jealously guard science and technology, and the masses, who are manipulated and kept in the dark, but to whom are doled out, in a highly controlled manner, some of the fruits of the advanced technology. This became confirmed when the team learned more about the Eben government. The conclusion that the Eben masses are strictly controlled is supported by the following remarks by Anonymous. Although the Eben civilization had no televisions, radios, etc., each Eben had a small device belted to their waists. This device gave orders to perform a particular task, news of pending events, and so on. The device displayed a screen, similar to a television screen but in a 3D style format. Our team brought back one of these devices. Anonymous continues. The Ebens were extremely disciplined in their daily lives. Every visitor worked on a schedule, which was not by a clock, but by the movement of their sun. Each little community had a large tower, which filtered the sun through. When the sun was at a particular point on the tower, it meant the visitors had to do a particular thing. Since they had no planet-wide communications access, the Ebens amused themselves with locally based, simple-minded games and distractions. Anonymous says, there were no televisions, radio stations, or anything like that. The Ebens played a game, something like soccer, but with a larger ball. The object was to kick the ball down a field into a goal. The game had very strange rules and was played for long periods of time. They also had another game, mostly played by the children, that consisted of making formations with groups of Ebens. They seemed to really enjoy the game, but our team found little understanding of the game. Every Eben was issued what they needed. No stores, malls, or shopping locations. There were central distribution centers where Ebens went to obtain items of need. All Ebens worked in some capacity. We learn more about Eben government from these statements by Anonymous. The Ebens had no single ruler. There was a council of governors, which the team named. This group controlled every single action on the planet. The members of the council seemed to have been around for a long time. There were leaders, but no real form of government. There was virtually no crime seen by the team. They had an army, which also acted as the police force. But no guns or weapons of any type were seen by our team. There were regular meetings within each small community. There was one large community, which acted as the central point of the civilization. All the industry was at this one large community. There was no money. Evidently, the actions of every Eben were controlled by orders or directions from a central authority, via the device worn on the belt, and by the movements of the sun. The central authority is apparently an agency of the Council of Governors, so named by the team. This makes the Eben populace almost robotic. It would even be appropriate to use the term enslaved. They certainly aren't catered to. All their basic needs are met, but they are not really free. They live very uniformly Spartan lives. Anonymous says, the individual Eben family lived a simple life. Their homes were constructed of clay, some type of material similar to wood, and some metal. The houses all looked the same. They appeared to be something from the southwest, looking like adobe. The interior of the house consisted of 4 rooms. One sleeping room where all Ebens slept in the same room on mats, a food preparation room, or kitchen, a family room, the largest in the house, and a small waste room. Not only did they all act and live alike, they also looked alike. Anonymous says, everyone looked the same initially to our team. But after some time, the team members learned to identify different Ebens by their voices. The picture of Eben civilization that emerges from this information is one that resembles the future society in The Time Machine, by H.G. Wells, where the Eloi populace was indoctrinated by the Morlocks to believe that they were free, but were actually hypnotically controlled to go through robotic activities and to periodically become food for their underground masters. This is also reminiscent of Nazi Germany, where the people were not permitted to listen to foreign radio broadcasts, so that they wouldn't be able to learn what life was like outside of Germany, and could thus be completely controlled by propaganda. At the same time, their elite SS masters were developing space-age technology and an advanced society in Antarctica, which the German populace knew nothing about. Anonymous answered some of the questions that were sent into the website after it was launched in November 2005. The following information was given in answer to a question about the even population. Why does the even population number only about 650,000? The Evens have a very stable, structured civilization. Each male has a mate. They are allowed to reproduce, in somewhat the same sexual way we do, but are limited to only a specific number of children. Our team never saw a family with more than 2 children. The Even civilization was so structured that they planned the birth of each and every child, spacing them apart to allow the proper social grouping of the civilization. Even children matured at a super rate, compared to Earth children. Our team watched live births, attended to by an Even doctor, and then watched the development of the child over a period of time. They matured at an alarming rate. The Evens had scientists, doctors, and technicians. There was one educational facility on the planet. If one was chosen, you attended the facility and learned the job one was best qualified and suited for. Although it was extremely difficult to judge or measure, the team estimated each Even's IQ to be 165. This information further substantiates the conclusion that the Council of Governors exercised complete authority and control over every aspect of Even life. There appeared to be no appeal from their decisions. It was absolutely dictatorial. And yet, the team estimated that the most of the Evens were extremely intelligent. The novel concept of individual liberty had not yet come to SErpo. They were all expected to work, and the fruits of their labor accrued primarily to the ruling class. Deprived of any leisure, they were not able to produce artistic or creative works to entertain or enlighten each other. The world they inhabited was grim and gray. And yet, we can dimly perceive the seeds of rebellion in EB5, the Even Einstein, who followed the team around. Apparently, he began to appreciate the concept of liberty in the actions of the team members, and wanted to know more about their principles of freedom. This excerpt from a later diary entry by the commander reinforces the view that Even society was strictly dictatorial. At one of our team meetings recently, 203 and myself decided to give up the military greetings, saluting that each member gave the first time they saw us. I decided we maintain our military bearing and manners, but we will give up the saluting. Each team member agreed. I have no problem with that. The Evens just stared at us when we did that. But they also have their greetings. Evens exchange greetings depending on the time of day. They hug on certain times, touch fingers on other times, and bow at other times. We still haven't figured out why they do that. EB2 just explained it was a formal greeting method. Evens live a very strict life. They keep a regimented lifestyle. We have seen some variances, but only by a few. The military keeps everyone in line. The military acts as a police force, as I mentioned before. They do not carry any weapons, but they do have different uniforms, and every Even respects that uniform. The military are patrolling all the time. They walk in pairs and seem to be extremely friendly, but can be very strict. We saw 2 Evens walking across a field. 2 military members quickly approached the 2 Evens and pointed to a building. The 2 Evens walked to that building with the military members. The military members were yelling something at them. At the time, neither 420 or 475 were available for translation, but I figured those 2 Evens violated some custom or law. We have been warned by the military when we approach something we are not supposed to approach. The military are very respectful when they deal with us, but they don't allow us to violate any of their customs or laws without warning us. When we first killed one of the sand snakes, we had 6 military members at the scene in no time. It took a great deal of diplomacy to deal with that situation. But the military never touched us nor threatened us. The Evens have adjusted to us, just as we have adjusted to them. We carry on our mission, and they allow us to do just about anything. The one forbidden act is not to enter a private living house. We did that once, and were politely escorted out by the military. There seems to be more military than are actually needed. We have seen them during an alert that occurred some time ago. EB2 came into our living compound, just after one of our rest periods. EB2 was excited, and told us to stay inside and not to exit our living quarters. We asked why, and EB2 said that an unknown spacecraft had entered their planet's orbit. But EB2 assured us that the military would take care of the problem. We naturally went into our own alert. We issued our weapons and stood by to guard our living area. We violated her instructions and went outside. We watched the skies and saw a lot of air traffic. We then saw all the military members with weapons, and something that looked like field packs. They were in full fighting gear, as 899 called it. The alert didn't last very long, and EB2 came back, looked at us a little curious, and then told us everything was all right and the alert was over. We asked her if the unknown spacecraft was identified. She said it wasn't a spacecraft, but just a natural piece of space debris, and left it at that. We didn't believe her, but we had no way of knowing any difference. We returned to our normal routines. With this new information from the team commander, we are now justified in referring to SErpo society as a police state. When he says, the military keeps everyone in line. The military are patrolling all the time. We can reasonably conclude that the police state designation is appropriate. It's unfortunate that we are not told how the ruling class lives, but we can presume that their lifestyle is far more commodious, perhaps even luxurious. Since the doctor in the biomedical building spoke perfect English, and he was clearly a member of the upper class, we now know that they are very well educated, especially about Earth matters. But, from what we have learned so far, our team was not permitted to meet them. Evidently, tyranny and enslavement exist in many worlds in our Milky Way. We can see clearly that this would have been our fate too if the fascists had won World War II. Now, as we begin to venture out into the cosmos, we must take it upon ourselves to embark on a mission to bring the blessings of liberty to the oppressed peoples throughout our galaxy. It's the right thing to do. Thomas Jefferson would have encouraged us to become the liberators of galactic societies subjugated by tyrants. Perhaps if, in the near future, William Shatner were elected President of the United States, we might be able to join our space brothers in the Galactic Federation in their quest to restore, protect, and advance freedom throughout the galaxy. Certainly, we would be a highly valued asset with Captain Kirk at the helm. Chapter 14. Feast, Fun, and Death. In answer to a question submitted to the website, Anonymous says, as to the Eben culture, they had a form of musical entertainment. The music sounded like tonal rhythms. They also listened to a type of chanting. The Ebens were dancers. They celebrated certain work periods with a ritual dance. The Ebens would form a circle and dance around, listening to the chanting type of music. The music was played on bells and drums, or something similar to them. From the commander, we learn more about how Ebens have fun. We had a feast today. What a feast. We used our last sea rations, but the Ebens didn't really care for our food. We did kill a beast. As I mentioned before, the Ebens allowed us to kill the beasts for meat. The meat isn't really bad. 899 says it tastes like bear, which I never ate. But Ebens look at us very strangely when we eat meat. Strange, they can clone creatures, and other species of humans, but they can't eat meat. How strange they are. But they allow us to do just about anything we want. We use the last of our salt and pepper, which does make eating their food more of a challenge. The Ebens don't have anything similar to salt and pepper. They do have an herb, as we call it, something like oregano, which they use. It has a tart taste, but we have developed a taste for it. The feast was great. We participated in the dances, which the Ebens really like. They get great pleasure dancing and playing their strange games. I described the games before, but at this feast, we saw something different. The game was played like chess, but with Ebens standing on a large square area of the compound. The squares were divided into 24 sets, Each set had another 2 spots. Just how or why the evens moved was a mystery to us. One of the evens would say a word, and then another would move. It appeared that it was a team game. 6 evens on each side. We couldn't figure it out, but at the end, the evens danced with each other, signifying a victory, we think. It was a fun day. And more from Anonymous. Our team brought along softball equipment for sporting activity. The evens would watch the game and laugh out loud. Their laugh sounded like a high-pitched yell. Eventually, the evens started playing the game, but never got used to catching the ball before it hit the ground. Our team also played touch football. Again, the evens watched the game intensely, and then played it themselves. But again, like softball, the evens never figured out they had to catch the football before it hit the ground. Although our team members honored the privacy of the evens, our team was allowed to witness births. Our team, snooping around, was able to capture the sexual activity of the evens. The males and females had similar sexual organs, and performed intercourse. The frequency of sexual activity was not recorded as being as often as in our society. It was believed that they performed the act for pleasure and reproduction. The team commander continues his narration about the feast day. My team played softball with some hard-nosed evens, who have learned the game. Well, for the most part. They still haven't figured out they have to catch the ball before it hits the ground. But they had fun. We have found some extremely gifted athletes among the evens. Then again, we found some who had no athletic ability. Just like humans. Our softball game ended when the rain came. We ended up inside the community building. We finished our meals, and went to our living area. As we do each day, we have our end-of-day briefing. We check each other for psychological condition and medical health. Our day ends and we start our 8 hours of rest. Evens have a different period of time, as I mentioned before. They rest about 4 hours, for every 10 hours working time. But we must consider that their hour is longer, and that their days are longer. So we stopped using our time and used the even time. It is difficult to understand, but this is only a diary. Once I return to Earth, I can explain the time difference, and how we had to use their time instead of ours. I keep writing about the time in every diary entry, but it is important to note that even though we have been here for about 3 years, Earth time, we have given up Earth time and utilized the even time. We tried to use their 2 suns as a counting system, but that didn't work. We then tried to use our own watches, but that didn't work. So we gave up our timepieces, and just used the evens time tower. Each village has one, and it is easy to understand the symbols. Each symbol means a certain time, and certain work period. The time situation was complex, because it related to the way SErpo revolves around Zeta Reticuli 1, while influenced by Zeta Reticuli 2. Here is what Anonymous says about the time problem. Our scientists had the same questions, as posed by your audience. Our scientists questioned our team members, and the information they gathered. Our scientists could not understand how the orbit of SErpo could revolve around the 2 suns at the distance measured. In the end, our scientists found that some things relating to that particular system were different in terms of physics, compared to our system. There were some questions about how our team measured the orbit, and other calculations based on the lack of a stable time base. For some reason, and I don't think this was ever determined, our time instruments did not work on SErpo. Now, considering this, you can understand the difficult job our team members had making calculations without time.
That's crazy.
They had to come up with an alternate method to measure speeds, orbits, and so on.
Time not
Challenge.
working.
Try solving a problem in physics without being able to measure time on Earth. So you see, our team did the best they could with the instruments they had, and the hardships they developed attempting to make scientific calculations. It is difficult for any Earth-based scientist to understand the different physics in other solar systems or on other planets. One of the questions sent to me involved Kepler's law of planetary motion. Our team had that information. We had some of the best military scientists on the team. But if you consider Kepler's law, it requires time, and our team could only measure time in the conventional way. It was determined that Kepler's laws did not apply to that solar system. Conclusion. One of the things our Earth-based scientists learned was not to apply Earth's laws of physics in a universal way. Anonymous says further on this subject. Regarding time, the team members brought several timepieces, such as wristwatches, non-battery style, as it stated in the debriefing data. The timepieces worked, but they had no reference to time since the even days were longer, the dusk and dawn periods were longer, and they had no calendars to reference. They did use the timepieces to calculate movement, for example, timing the movement of the Eben's two suns. They also calculated the time between work and rest periods. But, after a while, the team discarded their timepieces and used the Eben's measurement of time periods. The team became confused with the calendars they brought, a 10-year calendar. After 24 months, the team lost track of time as to the calendar since they could not properly calculate days compared to Earth days. They set up one large clock to the Earth time when they left. However, this was a battery-controlled clock, and when the battery died, the clock stopped, and they forgot to change the battery in time. Consequently, they lost the Earth time. The team brought a large quantity of batteries, but they ran out after about 5 years. The Ebens had no comparable item like batteries. Noted Cornell astronomer Carl Sagan was consulted about the planetary motion of SErpo that contributed to the timing difficulties. About this consultation, Anonymous says, one of the principal home-based astronomers that was contracted to assist us was Dr. Carl Edward Sagan. Initially, he was the biggest skeptic of the group. But as information was slowly analyzed, Dr. Sagan came back to the middle. I can't say he fully accepted every single piece of data, but he did agree on the final report. Email moderator Victor Martinez supplied the following fast facts about Carl Sagan's involvement in the program on the website. Born in Brooklyn, New York, on November 9, 1934, and died in Seattle, Washington, on December 20, 1996 of bone marrow cancer. He was an American astronomer, educator, and planetary scientist, and was the director of the Laboratory for Planetary Studies at Cornell University. Project SErpo's final report was written in 1980 with Dr. Sagan having been brought in halfway through the project. It is believed that he wrote his 1985 bestseller, Contact, based on his insider knowledge of the most secret project in human history, a human-alien exchange program of which he signed off on its final report. Years later, his book was made into the 1997 movie, Contact, starring Jodie Foster. Sagan became well known as a result of his public debate in 1969 with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, sponsored by the American Association for the Advancement of Science, about whether or not UFO investigation should be considered serious science. Sagan argued that it was pseudoscience, and he was proclaimed the winner. He was brought in as a consultant on the SErpo project about a year later, when he then had to, of course, reconsider his skepticism. Sagan also locked horns on the same issue with well-known scientist and UFO investigator Stanton Friedman, his classmate in physics at the University of Chicago in the 1950s. But, even long after his involvement with the SErpo program in 1980, when he wrote a section of the final report, he was still able to say, in his bestseller Cosmos, published in 1985, we maintain that there is no credible evidence for the Earth being visited, now or ever. We now know posthumously that Sagan really wasn't two-faced about the extraterrestrial question. He had to be skeptical about UFOs in public, so as not to jeopardize his position in the astronomy department at Cornell, where he could not afford to appear to be unprofessional. Cornell relied heavily on government funding for its astronomy research, especially from NASA, and this could have been terminated had his real beliefs been revealed. In reality, Sagan was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and it is believed that he may even have been a member of Majestic 12. His true interest in extraterrestrials was revealed in his blockbuster book, Contact, later made into a hit movie in 1997, starring Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. Sagan was a man of many talents. He won the Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction in 1978 for his book, The Dragons of Eden. He has been immortalized in downtown Ithaca, New York, the home of Cornell, with the Sagan Memorial Walk of Planets. Ironically, in the end, it was he, more than anyone else, who raised the public consciousness all over the world about the possibility of life on the billions and billions of other worlds. But he did it his way. In terms of public perception, He had to walk a narrow path. But he navigated it successfully, and his continued fame is well deserved. The team commander's diary entry continues. EB2 came by after the feast. She was concerned with 754. As I mentioned in one past entry, 754 became sick. But he has recovered. We don't know what he suffered, but 700 treated him with penicillin, which worked. We all have had some sort of sickness, since we've been here except 899. That guy is a solid rock. He hasn't been sick, not even a cold. 706, 700, and 754 are keeping detailed records of each team member and their medical and physical condition. We have tried to keep a steady physical fitness program since we arrived. Sometimes we follow it, and sometimes we don't. But everyone is in pretty good shape, at least physically. Mentally, that might be another story. Some team members miss Earth, as I do. But no team member has broken down, or has needed any type of psychological help from 700 or 754. Our screening process was great. Keeping busy is our medicine. We keep extremely busy, exploring and doing our mission goals. This diary entry by the commander was made about 3 Earth years into the visit. Shortly thereafter, 2 of the team members he mentions died. The security man, 899, was the first to die on SErpo. Evidently, his death occurred suddenly sometime after this diary entry was made, wherein, ironically, the commander had said that he was a solid rock, and he hasn't been sick, not even a cold. Anonymous gives a complete narration about the death of 899, and the attempt to revive him by the Eben doctors. The Ebens transported the team member's body to a remote area of the largest community. They took the body into a large building, apparently their hospital or medical center. The Ebens used a large examination table to view the body. They ran a large bluish-green light beam over the body. The Ebens watched a display that appeared on a large screen that looked like a television screen. The readouts were in the Eben written language, and thus our team could not understand it. However, there was a graphic display, similar to a heartbeat graph. The solid line was not wavering. Our doctors understood that meant the same thing that their equipment measured. The heart was not beating. The Ebens administered some liquid through a needle. This was done several times. Eventually, the heart started beating. But our doctors knew the internal organs of the body were damaged, but couldn't fully explain that to the Ebens. They finally made a sign, placing both their hands to the chest and bowing their heads. Our team members knew that meant the body was dead, and nothing could be done. The Ebens showed affection to our team. During the last work period, the Ebens had a ceremony for the dead team member, the same ceremony used when an Eben died. Our team held their own service, attended by the Ebens. The Ebens were extremely curious about our religious service. One team member, who was acting as a minister, performed a death service. Our team was eternally grateful for the Ebens' caring attitude for our dead friend. The second death also occurred sometime shortly after the above diary entry about the feast was made by the commander. One of the doctors died of pneumonia. We know he was alive at the time that diary entry was recorded, because both doctors are mentioned. It would be fair to conclude that it was 754 who died, since we learn in that entry that he had been sick, and treated with penicillin by 700, the other doctor. Interestingly, it was EB2 who first noticed, after the feast, that 754 was sick, and she was concerned about him. It is not surprising to find widespread and standardized religious observance in a police state, as in Mussolini's Italy. It is actually expected, because it is usually encouraged by the ruling authority. After all, it is easier to keep citizens in line when they believe that the social rules and regulations come from some sort of supreme being. The fact that all the Ebens were required to attend worship services every day at a designated time leads us to believe that this was another form of control by the ruling class, especially since it was uniform throughout the planet. Where there is freedom of belief, divergent opinions would be expected. From the following remarks by Anonymous, we learn about Eben religious customs. All of this information was taken from the debriefing document. Ebens did die. Our team members saw deaths, some from accidents, and some from natural causes. The Ebens buried the bodies, similar to our method. Our team saw 2 air accidents involving their intraplanet flying vehicle. The Ebens worshipped a supreme being. It appeared to be some sort of deity relating to the universe. They conducted daily services, normally at the end of the first work period. They had a building or church they entered to worship. Our team witnessed an aircraft accident that killed 4 Ebens. The Ebens performed a form of ritual at the crash site. They transported the bodies to a medical facility and examined the bodies. Our team members were always allowed to accompany the Ebens, except during rest period, when the Ebens closed their doors for privacy. Our team members saw the sorrow in the eyes of the Ebens during the death of their own. Later, after the last work period of the day, the Ebens had a funeral, at least that is what our team concluded it was. The Eben bodies were wrapped in a white cloth. Several types of liquids were poured over the bodies. Large numbers of Ebens would stand in a circle, chanting. The sounds became almost nauseating to our team members. The ceremony lasted for a long time. Finally, the bodies were placed in metal containers and buried in a remote location away from the communities. After the burial, the Ebens had a feast. Large tables of food were brought out, and everyone ate, danced, and played games. This occurred at every Eben death witnessed by our team. From the foregoing comments by Anonymous, we learn that the concept that death is a joyous release of the soul from the cares of physical existence may well be a galaxy-wide belief. Anonymous tells us about their Great War. Perhaps George Lucas knew about this piece of Eben history when he wrote Star Wars. Many hundreds of thousands of Ebens died in the Great War. The Ebens fought a battle with an enemy for a period of time. Our team members estimated the war lasted about 100 years, but, again, that is our time. The war was fought using particle beam weapons, developed by both civilizations. The Ebens eventually were able to destroy the enemy planet, killing the remaining enemy forces. They did warn us that several other alien races within our galaxy were hostile. The Ebens stay away from those races. The debriefing document never stated the name of the enemy, probably because they no longer existed. This information helps us to understand why the Eben military was so strong and dominant. Evidently, the aftermath of their Great War left the populace traumatized and very willing to accept continuing military authority. Chapter 15. Exploration. In this chapter, Anonymous gives details about the history and the physical environment and characteristics of SErpo. Anonymous says, SErpo was estimated to be about 3 billion years old. The 2 suns were about 5 billion years old, but only by estimation. The Eben civilization was estimated to be about 10,000 years old. They evolved from another planet, not on SErpo. The original home planet of the Ebens was threatened with extreme volcanic activity. The Ebens had to relocate to SErpo in order to protect their civilization. This occurred some 5,000 years ago. There was a period of darkness, but not total darkness. The Eben planet is located within a solar system of the Zeta Reticuli star system, 2/5 magnitude yellow double stars, similar to our Sun, located near the Large Magellanic Cloud. The planet had 2 suns, but their angles were small and allowed some darkness on the planet depending on one's location. The planet was tilted, which allowed the northern part of the planet to be cooler. The planet was a little less than Earth's size. The atmosphere was similar to Earth's and contained the elements of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Zeta Reticuli is approximately 37 light years from us. There were about 100 different villages or living locations for the Ebens. The Ebens only used a small portion of their planet. They did mine minerals in remote areas of the planet, and had a large industrial plant in the southern portion of the planet near a body of water. Our team determined this plant had some sort of hydroelectrical operation. Paul McGovern adds, in his comment, there were small communities throughout the planet. There were underground rivers, which fed into open valleys. Regarding the team's adaptation to the conditions on SErpo, Anonymous says, once the team arrived on the Eben planet, it took them several months to adjust to the atmosphere. During the adjustment period, they suffered headaches, dizziness, and disorientation. The bright suns of the Eben planet also presented problems. Although they had sunglasses, they still suffered from the bright sunlight and the danger of sun exposure. The radiation level of the planet was a little higher than that of Earth. They were careful to cover their bodies at all times. Our team eventually relocated to the north in order to stay cool. The ground transportation used by our team was similar to a helicopter. The power system was a sealed energy device that provided electrical power and lift for the craft. It was very easy to fly, and our pilots learned the system within days. The Ebens did have vehicles, which floated above the ground, and did not have any tires or wheels. Paul McGovern adds the following information in his comment. The team was never isolated or restricted by the visitors. They could travel as they wished and see whatever they wanted to see. After about 6 years, the team moved to a northern portion of the visitors' planet, where the temperature was cooler and which contained ample vegetation. The visitors built a small community for the team. The exchange team had to endure extreme hardship adjusting to the environment of the visitors' planet. The heat was extreme and took many years to adjust. Anonymous describes Eben technology. The Ebens developed a different type of electrical and propulsion system. It was unknown to our team and I don't think we ever really understood it. They were able to tap into a vacuum and bring back an enormous amount of energy from that vacuum. Our team's living quarters, which consisted of several small buildings, contained electricity powered by a small box. This small box supplied all the power our team needed. Ironically, the electrical equipment our team brought on the trip worked using their power source only. The Eben energy device was analyzed over and over again by our team. Since our team did not have access to scientific microscopes or other measuring equipment, we could not understand the function of the energy device. But, regardless of the electrical demand, the Eben energy device provided the proper current and wattage. Our team surmised the device had some sort of regulator that sensed the required current and wattage, and then supplied that specific amount. Los Alamos actually had one of these energy devices in their possession as early as 1947. It was retrieved from the second crashed Roswell disk, but no one had any idea what it was. It wasn't until 1970 that they finally realized that it was some sort of power source, but they could not understand how it worked. Then, when the SErpo team brought 2 of the devices back to Earth in 1978, experimentation was begun in earnest to understand how it functioned, and attempts were made to duplicate the technology.
Yeah,
It was named
experiments.
Crystal Rectangle, or SER for short. A small dot was visible in the SER that moved whenever an electrical demand was made on the device. After years of experimentation and research, still ongoing, it was determined that the dot was a perfectly rounded particle of charged antimatter. Anonymous continues. The team also took electric razors, coffee pots, electric heaters, a DIM, no explanation as to what this was, an electric IBM typewriter, a scientific calculator, slide rules, both conventional and scientific, base data collection recorder, 3 different sized telescopes, tangents, both conventional and electrical. The list goes on and on. But they took about everything they were allowed to take. As to weight. Regarding the weapons, there was a lengthy discussion about weapons. At the end, the Ebens didn't really care. So our team members decided to take some, just in case. Not for a fight, God knows, as our team was vastly outnumbered, but for the safety aspects of it. Remember, the 12 were all military members, so weapons made them feel safe. A side note, they only took 50 rounds of ammunition per handgun and 100 rounds of ammunition per rifle. All the information in this section took up the entire 7th email posting by Anonymous, sent on November 17, 2005. Our team contained 2 geologists. They were also cross-trained as biologists. The first thing our geologists did was map the entire planet. The first step was to divide the planet in half, thus creating an equator. Then they established a northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Within each hemisphere, they created 4 quadrants. Finally, they established the north and south poles. This was the easiest method to study the planet. Most of the Eben communities were placed along the equator. However, there were some communities established north of the equator in each of the 4 quadrants in the northern hemispheres. There were no communities located in either poles. The southern pole was desert. It was barren land with virtually no precipitation, where absolutely nothing grew in this area. There were volcanic rock formations, and part of the extreme south contained a rock desert. Temperatures in the South Pole were measured at between 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Going further north from the South Pole in Quadrant 1, the team found extrusive rocks. This indicated some volcanic activity in the area. Our team found numerous volcanoes in this area. The team found several fissure eruptions in this region, with standing water. The water was tested and contained high levels of sulfur, zinc, copper, and other unknown chemicals. Our team eventually moved to an area in Quadrant 1 in the Northern Hemisphere. This area contained moderate temperatures, between 50 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and ample amounts of shade. The Ebens built a little community for the team. Most of the remaining exploration of the planet was done from this point. The team only explored the Southern Hemisphere once, obtaining geological information. Because of the intense heat, the team decided not to venture back. The team continued to explore the Northern Hemisphere, where, as the team traveled towards the North Pole, the temperature cooled considerably. The team found mountains, raising to an elevation of 15,000 feet, and valleys that sank below the basic mark the team established for sea level. Lush green fields were found containing a form of grass, but contained bulbs. The team coined these fields clover fields, even though the bulbs were not clover. The radiation levels were lower in the Northern Hemisphere than at the equator and Southern Hemisphere. The North Pole contained cold weather, and the team saw the first sign of snow. Blankets of snow littered the landscape around the North Pole. The snow measured about 20 feet at its deepest. The temperature was a constant 33 degrees. Our team never found the temperature to vary in this region. The Ebens could not stand to be in this region for long. They suffered extreme hypothermia. The team's guide wore a suit, similar to a spacesuit with built-in heaters. Our team found evidence of past earthquakes. Fault lines were found along the northern tip of the Southern Hemisphere. Exfoliation was observed along with extrusive rocks, which indicated magma flows in the past. Our team brought back hundreds of samples of SErpo soil, vegetation, water, and other items for testing on Earth. During our team's exploration, they discovered numerous types of animals. The strangest was the beast, which looked like a large ox. The animal was timid and never seemed to be hostile. Another animal looked like a mountain lion, but had long fur around the neck. This animal was curious, but was not considered hostile by the Ebens. During the exploration of Quadrant 4 of the Southern Hemisphere, the team found a very long and large creature that appeared to be a snake. This creature was deadly as explained by the Ebens. The head of the creature was large, and contained almost human-like eyes. This was the only time our team used their weapons and killed the creature. The Ebens didn't appear to be upset that the team killed the creature, but was upset they used a weapon. The team brought 4 .45 caliber Colt, standard military issued, handguns and 4 M2 carbine rifles. After killing the creature, the team dissected it. The internal organs were strange, and nothing similar to an Earth-style snake. The creature measured 15 feet long, and 1.5 feet in diameter. The team was curious about the eyes. Examination of the eyes revealed cones, similar to those found in human eyes. The eye contained an iris, and the back contained a large nerve, similar to the optic nerve feeding into the creature's brain. The brain was large, much larger than any Earth-based snake. The team wanted to eat the meat from the creature, but the Ebens guides politely told them no. The bodies of water on SErpo did not contain fish as we know them. Some bodies, near the equator, did contain strange-looking creatures, similar to eels, small and about 8 to 10 inches long, and was probably a cousin of the land-based snake. There was something like a jungle, near the marshlands, but not the jungles that we're familiar with. The following posting by Anonymous in Release 10A on December 8, 2005, was in reaction to having listened to a coast-to-coast radio interview of Richard C. Doty, a retired special agent of the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, and Bill Ryan, the SErpo website creator, about Project Crystal Night the previous evening. Yes, I did listen to the entire show. Never heard this guy George Nuri before. but he seemed to be a very open-minded narrator, and for that, me and my DIA colleagues were very pleased. The show caused a lot of buzzing in the halls of the DIA. Bill Riot and Rick Doty both did an excellent job. I was hoping you, addressing Victor Martinez, might just show up and add your own comments since you know more about me than anyone else, as well as the program, but I guess that wasn't possible. I called Mr. Redacted this morning. I found some discrepancies about the animals mentioned on the show. The armadillo-like creature was not aggressive, it just scared the team members. The even guy directed some type of sound, very high pitch, at the armadillo creature, and that scared it away. These creatures were seen at several locations around the planet. Some were larger than others, but they were not aggressive. Only the snake-like creature was aggressive, which forced the team to kill one. The snake-like creatures were located in just one location, and the team never saw another one. As for birds, there were two types of flying creatures. One resembled a hawk, and the other looked like a large flying squirrel. Neither were aggressive, and the team could never catch one for examination. As for insects, they had small bugs, similar to cockroaches, but smaller. They were harmless, but did get into the team's equipment. They had a hardened shell, with a soft interior body. The team never observed any flying insects, such as flies or wasps. Several other small bugs were found and identified. The team commander knew that they were absorbing high levels of radiation, and spoke about it in a diary entry previously quoted. A comment received on November 15, 2005, discussed the radiation problem. One thing that concerns me is the radiation the team was receiving. I would think the team had some sort of radiation detection equipment. Back then, they had radax. We also had dosimeters. I'm sure each team member wore one, and must have read it periodically. Knowing this was a military mission, someone must have been designated a health monitor, probably the physicians. If the team realized they were receiving large doses of radiation, why didn't they bring this to the Evens' attention? If the Evens were so benevolent, then they might have provided some form of protection to the team members, or provided them with an anti-radiation pill, or something. Or, once the team received the maximum dose, why didn't the Evens bring them home? One of my former colleagues thinks the radiation could be something different, in another wavelength, and thus our team members didn't register that particular radiation dose. The fact that the radiation level was lower in the northern hemisphere was another reason they decided to remain in Quadrant 1. It makes sense that radiation levels would be lower in a location that received less direct sunlight. The team stayed in Quadrant 1 for the remaining 7 years of their mission on SErpo. However, that didn't solve the radiation problem. Anonymous says, each team member received a large dose of radiation during their stay on SErpo. Most of the team members died later of radiation-related illnesses. Chapter 16. The Return. The team remained on SErpo for 13 years. They paid a 3-year penalty for their inability to keep track of Earth time. After all their time devices failed, they tried desperately to translate 1 revolution of SErpo to 1 revolution of Earth, but were not able to keep up accounting discipline. They knew that a SErpo day was 43 Earth hours, so to compute Earth months from SErpo months they would need to multiply 43 times 30.2 and divide by 24. That means that 54.11 Earth days passed for each SErpo month. So, all they had to do was to keep track of SErpo months of 30.2 SErpo days each, and then multiply by 54.11 to calculate the Earth time passage in days. But, somehow, their record kept breaking down, and they couldn't reset their results properly. It's easy to understand how this could have happened, despite their best-intentioned plans to maintain military discipline. Marking SErpo days by the movements of the 2 suns may have been more difficult than it seems. And then, of course, how does one accurately measure 20% of a day? The team returned to Earth on August 18, 1978. Only 7 team members returned. 3 had died, 1 in the alien spaceship en route to SErpo, and 2 on the planet. 2 decided to remain on SErpo, and to live out their lives there. Anonymous responded to a question about why 2 team members decided to stay. He says, "Why some team members remained. The debriefing reported that the team members who remained did so voluntarily. They fell in love with the culture of the Evans and the planet. They were not ordered to return. Communication with the remaining crew members, the 2 who stayed on SErpo, lasted until about 1988. No other communication was received from those team members. The 2 who died on the planet SErpo, 899 and 754, were placed in coffins and buried. Their bodies were returned to Earth." Regarding the debriefing, Anonymous has this to say. The returnees were isolated from 1978 until 1984 at various military installations. The Air Force Office of Special Investigation was responsible for their security and safety. It also conducted debriefing sessions with the returnees. A comment sent into the website by someone who calls himself Anonymous 2 adds the following. "We did have a special unit that handled their debriefing, but USAF Positive Intelligence was also involved. I was never involved in that program, but I knew other agents who were. There is common agreement that the returning team was debriefed for a solid year, and the information they gave is contained in a 3,000-page document. Anonymous claims to have access to that document, and to have garnered all the information that was submitted to Victor Martinez, the email moderator, from that book." Rick Doty commented on that in an article he wrote for UFO magazine in 2006. Doty says, "We must remember that Mr. Anonymous will hardly have the 3,000-page report in his living room just sitting there like a Sears catalog. The report will be guarded under the tightest conceivable security, and the conditions of access are unknown by us. We can hypothesize that Anonymous may not even have access to the documents at all, and may be relying on memory, someone else's memory, or someone else supplying him with the information, maybe by phone or by tape, under conditions over which he himself has no control. This might explain some of the inconsistencies. However, Anonymous is highly qualified as a historian on extraterrestrial contact affairs. According to Anonymous, the last survivor of the entire team, including the alternates who remained on Earth, died in 2002 in Florida. In August 2006, Bill Ryan, the webmaster, received the following message from an anonymous source in U.S. intelligence, and he posted it on the website on August 30th, 2006. Every single bit of information from the postings regarding the crew logs is absolutely correct. I verified that the logs are real and were transcribed from official tape recordings made by the crew. There are 5,419 cassette tapes that contain voice recordings. I've heard one of them, but saw all of them in a secure environment. I know these logs are genuine. I was given the opportunity to see them, and listen to one in its entirety, which was made by the team commander himself. How could someone fake 5,419 by 90-minute tapes? Do the math. It would have taken someone 338 days to fabricate the tapes. That type of government cassette tape is no longer sold today, but they were military issue then. There were no cassette tapes available to the public until 1968. The crew took 60 boxes each containing 100 by 90-minute cassette tapes, which is 6,000 tapes. These tapes were recorded during the mission to SErpo, over the course of their years away from Earth. Each crew member had a recording device, and recorded their observations. Once they returned, the tapes were transcribed over a period of 7 years. Look at the critics trying to destroy this fantastic true story. If I were the keeper of this information, I wouldn't release it to anyone, except the general public, through the news media. There are some true disbelievers in the UFO community who wouldn't believe the story if God himself told it. The story of the release of the photographs taken on SErpo is tortuous. Victor Martinez did everything in his power to obtain and publish the best 100 of the over 3,000 photos brought back to Earth by the team. But despite the tireless and heroic efforts of both himself, Bill Ryan, and Anonymous, they were blocked at every turn. Ultimately, they had to concede defeat. Anonymous did eventually send Martinez a computer disk containing 6 photo images, but as will be seen, 5 of those were compromised, and in the end, only 1 questionable photo survived. The forces preventing the publication of the photos were just too powerful.
I know. Go away. Hey, Leprkon, you're live on the Late Night L.O.A.D.
Hey. What I missed?
We're finishing up that Planet SErpo stuff. We're still kind of on that.
Well, I'm because of work, I've missed like the last 3 episodes of you guys doing that. So give me a quick rundown on how those went. What have I missed?
All right, so when you left off, they were training to go, right? That's where you left off, right?
No, yeah, maybe they were just getting into that.
Okay, so training to go. So the Ebens, they had started talking about doing a personnel swap, like up to 12 people or whatever. 12 Ebens stay on Earth, 12 humans go to SErpo. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So after they talked about the swap, they confirmed it. They went around and they found a bunch of humans that would be suitable for the job. They did like originally 24 or whatever, and then those 24 got narrowed down to 12. 12 humans went to the other planet. They trained for like 3 years, I think, or something like that. Real super top secret training for 3 years. So then they start the journey to the other planet. In the middle of the journey to the other planet, they discover that traveling through space is no joke. Like you can get sick, you can die just from traveling. Now, not doing anything, just moving through space. You can get sick and die. So one of the humans dies on the travel through space, and then they finally make it to planet SErpo, and it's basically what we would have almost assumed it would have been. They describe what turns out to be like a corporate shell of a world. Like corporations took over, drained the world of all of its resources, and then left the Ebens there on that planet to live a shitty life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it looked like when they got there. And then the humans, they sat there and they tried to and that's where we're at right now. Is we were just watching life on planet SErpo. We were just listening to it. And so what they were talking about tonight,
did they cover any decent detail about the ship, how fast they were traveling in the ship, anything like that?
Well, they said that they traveled somewhat of 40 light years. So they said the star system, they finally relayed the star system. It's Zeta Reticuli.
Okay.
So it's 40 light years. And they said they were able to travel 40 light years in a 10-month period. So that's the Ebens technology. So, but along with that, like they went into a lot of detail about like the space sickness involved with that kind of travel power. Like,
I suppose that makes sense.
Yep.
Our bodies haven't seen anything like that.
Yep. So it's got a real heavy give and take on that. Then they just like they didn't talk about what they didn't discern or discredit anything. So they didn't talk about anything like the direct mechanics of the engines or anything like that.
I didn't expect that. I was kind of curious how fast they were traveling or anything.
So that's pretty much the only detail they give you is like a time related detail, like 40 light years into 10 months. Like that's a hell of a fucking jump right there, and a hop and a skip. So with all that, yeah, that's what they were doing there. So yeah, 10 months of travel. They get to planet SErpo. They realize it's kind of like a used up husk of a world, kind of like a prune, if I were to give it like a description. But the environment of the civilization isn't hostile. It's very open and very forgiving. And then along with that, on this planet, humans aren't the only ones visiting. Every species from every galaxy from everywhere is visiting.
Why?
So it turns out later on, like 5 years into the stay, they discover that the Ebens aren't smart. The Ebens are collectors. They collect everything. They're like the Borg. They collect all the knowledge. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's important, they collect it. So what was important about us was our DNA. So they were collecting our DNA. And that's what they discern to the scientists and the doctors, because they have to talk about the death of one of their people when they get to the dude that died on the spaceship. Yeah, they said after he died, they took his body and they used it to create a whole bunch of more creatures and shit. Like he became like 500 new species or something. Like they took his DNA and cloned out 500 new species of things. So they're like collectors. They don't care. They don't have they don't put an attachment to things like that and stuff like that. So they collect all those things. They record the data on it and then they send it back, or they just get rid of it. They discard it. Now, if it's something where they can use it, like DNA, they fucking use the fuck out of it. That's what their whole mode of operation is all about, DNA and using DNA. So that's why they're bringing all the species from all over the universe to their planet, is so that they can have easy access to that DNA and stuff, instead of having to constantly go and get it. We can just bring some of them here, and then we can see how long we can keep them alive on our planet. Near the end, because see, we're back to the part to where now they're going to start reporting all these things to Earth. So they made the trip back home, and only like 5 or 7 scientists make it home. So 2 people decided to stay on the planet, which was stupid. They didn't live a long life. And then the rest of the people that did survive, they chose to come home. And then there was like one more person that died of radiation poisoning. So they found out that the planet SErpo, humans can only live there for so long because the planet itself is poisoned by radiation. The 2 stars create 2 different wavelengths of radiation that the human body can't fight off. So that's the whole thing. That's where we're at right now. Not trying to simplify it, but that's they repeated quite a few synapses of talking about some of the species, the critters and stuff that they were watching and seeing. Like there was only two bird-like creatures that lived on their planet, which was one was like a falcon and one was like a flying squirrel. And then they were there's a giant cat-like creature, there was like a giant pig-like creature, and then there was a giant snake-like creature. And they're these are the only creatures that live on this planet, other than a couple different types of bugs. No mosquitoes, wasps, or bees, or any kind of pestilent bugs. Only bugs that were there were bugs that apparently are supposed to be good for the planet. So soak up radiation and shit. So yeah, that's where we're at with it. And right now, like I said, it wasn't too bad. We were just finishing up. They were getting to Earth and they were talking about the proofs, all the exhibits that they brought home. So they were over 6,000 hours of communications through tape, recording tape. They were over 6,000 hours of that. That'd be pretty hard. That'd be over a year of somebody nonstop recording to try and fake that. That's how much work you would have to do 24/7 for a year. You'd be just sitting there recording and saying things into microphones.
Yeah, we're talking about the experience.
Yeah. He was that's a lot of documentation that's just, you wouldn't want to sit there and actually fake that shit. He was that's just, and then other than that, he said they were just going through all the different things, whatever creatures they did kill and everything like that. They did test tube it up and stuff and put the creature into a bunch of test tubes to bring home to let more scientists and stuff dissect and get a better understanding of and all that type of shit. Yeah, so I mean that's where it is. The show is just about to come to a close for the night, and then we're going to do the wrap-up show on Tuesday.
Perfect. I'll
for
be
this.
available for all of the shows next week because I'll be doing all open shifts. So
Sweet.
you'll see my face next week.
Awesome. Sweet. And then
Yeah, you guys have a good one, and glad I got to catch you guys at the end of the late night show.
all right. Well, we'll talk to you later then. All right. All right, guys. And that's it for me too. I'm gonna bounce up out of here, and then we will finish the wrap up basically. Which will be 16, 17, and 18. We'll finish that up on Tuesday. So thank you guys for joining us. This QR code is for the Gundam Death Scythe. And then up in the corner, don't forget to go over to our Patreon and throw us a couple bucks to get a sponsorship for yourself, and we'll talk about you, your business, or whatever you want for at least 2 minutes every show. And if you like what we're doing, go over to WebCOfficial at youtube.com and send us a subscribe and a like and a share and a comment. Give us all that stuff and let us know you're here, happening and howling, because that's what lets us know you're having fun. The Model Rocketeer says we had a great show with you too, the Model Rocketeer, and we're going to get out of here.